Am I the asshole for refusing to lend my designer purse to my sister-in-law for her wedding? I, 24 female, have a Chanel purse that was a gift from my parents when I graduated college. It's by far the most expensive thing I own. My brother recently got married, and his new wife, Amy, asked if she could borrow my Chanel purse for their wedding day photos and reception. Amy doesn't own any designer bags and really wanted one to complete her wedding look. I politely declined to lend her my purse. That purse is extremely valuable to me, and the thought of something happening to it makes me anxious. Amy called me selfish and materialistic for not lending it to her for the wedding. She said I was more concerned about a status symbol than helping family. My parents and brother also got upset with me, saying I should be willing to share my things with family, but I don't think I should have to hand over my most prized possession just because it's for a wedding. Now the whole family is angry with me. Am I the asshole for not lending my sister-in-law my expensive designer purse for her wedding? She's acting like I ruined her big day over this, but I think it was an unreasonable request.
Today marks 3.5 years since my dad murdered my mom, and I want to tell you guys a little bit more about the story. I've been meaning to for a while. I'm going to put a trigger warning. It's a pretty heavy story. I'm going to try and keep it as pleasant as possible, but it's pretty heavy. So, trigger warning. As long as I can remember, my dad was very abusive. I don't have a memory of him that was not associated with fear. And I'd seen and heard him abuse my mom over and over and over again. In August of 2019, my mom filed for divorce. She told him that she was going on a work trip. She packed her bags and left. Obviously was not going on a work trip. So she stayed with a friend in her basement, kind of went into hiding for like a month or two. It was quite a while. During that time period, I had just moved back to St. Louis from college. So I was just trying to establish myself. It was just like a really weird time. It got to the point that we really felt like, okay, like it's good. We're gonna survive. Everything's gonna be okay. And so we started to look for an apartment, and we got one together in October of 2019. It was great and it was happy, and those couple months are like my fondest memories. So on December 8th, 2019, it was just after midnight. My mom was coming home from a Christmas party. I think my dad either followed me or followed my mom home from work and kind of figured out where we were living. So she got home from this party, was getting out of her car, and my dad approached her in the parking lot. They got into an argument. There was a witness that heard her scream. He ended up hitting her in the head with a tire gauge and then shooting her. And then he got in her car and took her car back to our house, our childhood home. That was about 20 minutes away. He had left the car that he drove there in the parking lot with our childhood dog. And so on his way from our apartment to the house, he texted me saying, take care of the dog, essentially. So praise God, I was asleep this whole time. I didn't hear anything. I woke up at around 2. And I just had a weird gut feeling that something was wrong. And so I looked at my phone and I saw that weird text from my dad, and I was like, weird. And so I went to my mom's room and saw that she wasn't there, and I was like, weird. And I had my mom's location on my phone, and so I looked at it and it said that she was in the parking lot, and I was like, okay. So I went over to my window and I opened the blinds. I saw the police cars and the lights and the crime scene tape and everything. And in that moment, I think I knew, but I didn't want to know. And so I went outside, and a police officer approached me, and I was like, where's my mom? Like, she's missing. And the police officer just looked at me, and in that moment I knew. But I started to walk towards the crime scene tape, and she like restrained me. And I was like, is that my mom? Is she dead? And she just like looked at me and then was like, yeah. And I'm like, sick. The detectives came into our apartment, did their whole spiel. Honestly, I don't remember 95% of it. I was just dissociating at that point. I had a couple people who were awake and who answered my phone calls, and so they came over, and so I had people around me pretty quickly. Praise God. At this point, they didn't know where my dad was, but they did know that there was a fire 20 minutes away at this house that matched the address on my mom's ID. So I'd say maybe around like 4 a.m. we finally got the confirmation that my dad was in the house and he was deceased. And they also found the murder weapon in the house in the fire. They let the house burn for a long time because they had a feeling that he was in there. And so it was a total lost fire. Nothing there was saved. So that's kind of like the night of and what happened. As the investigation kind of unfolded, we learned that there was a lot of premeditation. My dad had opened up a storage unit 4 days after my mom had left back in August and started to move things from the house in there to protect them because he knew he was going to set the house on fire. He had written my brother and I both letters. I know I've mentioned the letter on here before. I don't think I'll ever read it to you guys, mostly because it's just a lot of it is out of context and wouldn't really make sense unless I sat down and gave you a 10-minute spiel about each little part of the letter. The main gist was that he essentially said it was all my fault. and that I was the one to blame for destroying the family, essentially. So that's kind of like the meat and potatoes of the story. Obviously there's other details, but I could talk for an hour about it. As I've been grieving and processing this as much as I possibly can, I've kind of gotten to the point of accepting that my mom is safer than she's ever been, and that's worth all the pain and discomfort that I'm feeling here.
How do I tell my fiance that I'm not attracted to him? My fiance and I met in school over 10 years ago. We started running in the same friend circle, and after that we became best friends. Now, I will say I always knew that he had a thing for me, but he was always so soft and gentle. He was always my best friend that I could tell everything to. And when it came to guys, he always gave me the best advice. I knew he had my back always. After high school, he went away for college and I stayed home. And I started dating a ton of guys. Of course, I kept him updated on everybody I was dating. During the summer, he came to visit us, and that's when I realized he had a huge glow up. But he was still the same guy. He asked me if we could go to dinner, the movies. Essentially, they were like mini dates. And the more I hung out with him, the more I thought, okay, maybe I am attracted to him. At least I wanted to believe it. I mean, he'd be the perfect man for me. We know each other so well. He makes me laugh. He cares about me. My family already loves him. So I decided to give him a chance. This might sound bad, but his glow up was kind of like a trick. It tricked me into believing that I was attracted to him, but then I tricked myself into believing that I could be with him. When he asked me to be his girlfriend, I said yes. But anytime he tried to kiss me, I would always feel weird. He finally had to go back to college, and this is when I had to muster up the courage to finally kiss him. And so I did. It was not a good kiss. In fact, I didn't feel anything. But I continued to trick myself into believing that I'll feel something for him eventually. He was so in love with me. All he did was talk about me, always texting me, calling me. He was the perfect boyfriend. A year later, he actually proposed. And at this point, I had convinced myself long enough that I liked him. So I said yes. But as we started planning, I realized I am not attracted to him at all. I planned out the most amazing proposal. He took me down to a lake where we used to hang out with all our friends. As we started getting closer to the lake, there was a pathway of candles. And as soon as I saw those candles, I knew that he was going to propose. And the worst part is the whole time he was proposing, I just kept looking at his face trying to figure out if I'm attracted to him or not. Or if what I feel is just love of a friend that I've loved for years. I was so confused and I didn't know how to say, I don't know. So instead I said yes. Both of our families were right there hiding. They came out and congratulated us. My parents actually could not be happier. They love my fiance. How could they not? He's been my best friend for 10 years. I felt like I was in a racing car and I couldn't pump the brakes. Everything was happening so quickly and I couldn't say, hold on. Like, let me think about this. I was so confused and torn up, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I also didn't want to hurt my own feelings. I opened up to my mom and told her exactly how I felt. And she says, I'm not surprised. When I asked her why, she told me that she knew he was never my type of guy, but she knew that he could grow to be one. And that the love he and I feel for each other is just as important as the love a husband and wife might feel. But I explained to her that even though, yes, I truly deeply love him, I'm just not attracted to him. And she confessed that when her and my dad got engaged, she wasn't even in love with him, let alone attracted to him. But she says that all of that came with time. And that all we see in movies is people falling head over heels, having the best sex and the best relationships, and that I needed to realize it was only in movies. After talking to my mom, I felt worse about the entire situation. I was no longer confused. I knew I definitely was not attracted to him. And part of me knew that I would never come to be attracted to him. We'd already been together a year at this point, and I still felt nothing when he kissed me. I felt like a liar, felt guilty. Then something happened. A friend group set up a whole party and they wanted us to come. But there were a couple of people that we had never met. And like a scene straight out of a movie, I see this guy from across the room and he looks at me. Instant attraction. I can't even describe it. It's like I just couldn't stop looking at him. And he couldn't stop looking at me either. Every time I looked in his direction, he was always looking at me. Then one of our friends introduced us, as in me and my fiance, to this guy. He was new to the friend group and he had just moved into town. This is what I'm talking about. I want to feel those feelings for whoever I end up marrying, instead of guilt and pity. I told my parents I was going to break off the engagement, but they want me to reconsider. And no, I haven't had any contact with that guy, obviously. The feeling he gave me, isn't that what I should be feeling for my fiance? I'm speaking to him tonight, so I will be posting a third part to this story time tomorrow. Wish me luck and give me some tips on what I should say to him. Don't want to hurt him, but I know he's going to get hurt anyway. And I don't want to lie to him. I just want to tell him the truth. I'm not attracted to you. But how do I say that without making him feel like he's ugly or something? Went to his apartment and confessed the whole thing. I told him that I loved him, but like a best friend. And that really at no point did I ever really feel attraction for him. You'll never guess what he said. He said that he already knew, but that he didn't care because he knows that I would come to love him too. I felt even worse after he said this. He begged me to stay, but ultimately I said no and broke up with him. Luckily, we hadn't spent any money on the wedding planning, but our families were really upset. His mom called me really angry and told me off, which of course didn't surprise me, but it stung like hell. I'm currently public enemy number 1, and everyone in our friend group hates me. Like, actually, none of my friends want to talk to me right now. I feel miserable, but it took guts to do what I did. A lot of people stay in relationships like this because they're comfortable.
Let's talk about the time that two men I had met in the same day got into a fight over me. You'll be the judge about whether or not it was over me. So this was like, I want to say 2018, 2019. And one of my college friends invited me out to brunch with a couple of her guy friends. The weather was so nice that we were like, hey, let's keep the vibes going. So we go back to their place to just like take some time to regroup and decide to go to a day party. The day party was at Hudson Terrace, which is now known as Harbor, but if you know, back in the day, it was Hudson Terrace. So we go, someone catches my attention and, you know, we start interacting. And I like noticed that one of the guys that, you know, I hung out with that I met at brunch is like kind of like lingering around and like kind of like staring. So, you know, I'm continuing to dance and interact with this guy. What are we gonna call the brunch guy? We can call him, let's call him Leo. Leo, who I just met a few hours prior at brunch, comes over to the guy who I met at the day party, and we can call him Bobby. So Leo goes over to Bobby. I'm standing right there, by the way. And Leo goes, hey, that's my girlfriend. Mind you, I'm standing right there, so I hear exactly what he says. And when I tell you the look of shock on my face, I had never experienced madness on this level. So Bobby turns to me and he's like, is this true? Like, this guy is saying that you're his girlfriend. I'm so confused. I'm dumbfounded. And I turned to Bobby and I was like, I just met this man today. Bobby turns back to Leo, goes, hey dude, like, she says she doesn't really know you. Mind you, I just want to say, I think it's really crazy that these two men are really having a conversation in front of me about me, like on some weird, just like territorial stuff, which is why I was like, it was not over me. I'm not gonna take credit for something that the male ego is completely responsible for. He goes, hey, she says she just met you, like, I think you should just chill. Basically trying to tell him like, yo, like, you should just chill. Like, she doesn't really want to talk to you. But Leo wasn't really feeling that, which is kind of crazy. And like, I don't remember exactly what he said after that, but it was just, whatever he said, it further enhanced the idea that this man was not well. And Leo was not really backing down. He starts kind of raising his voice and gets in Bobby's face. And then Leo kind of shoves Bobby back. I learned this about Bobby after the fact. But Bobby at the time was active in the army. So besides the fact that it was very clear that he worked out, I learned later that this man is in the army. Bobby shoves him back. And honestly, I don't know if it was that Leo is just very weak or the floor was slippery or Bobby happened to be very strong. The shove back didn't really look that crazy. I'm not gonna lie. It didn't look that crazy. Nevertheless, Bobby pushes Leo back and Leo goes flying. And now it becomes pretty clear to everyone in the room that there is a fight happening. Like, then they start really trying to go at it. And I'm not gonna lie to you, part of me had always wanted to be that girl that's like, oh my God, guys, stop fighting, like, stop. But at this point in time, I wasn't stupid. And I was like, I don't know either of these men, and I'm not about to risk my dainty little life trying to, you know, encourage two men that I just met to not fight. I just stood there, and it was really funny because while I was standing there watching everything happen, there was a third guy who had I had a conversation with at the day party, and I could tell that he was trying to flirt or whatever, but I wasn't really interested. And it's funny because he was still nearby and he comes back to me, or he's like watching this fight happen, and he turns to me and he's like, you see what you caused? And I was like, this is not me. This is not me. But it also very much so was like, is this what Helena Troy felt like? Like, is this what she felt like? At any rate, bouncers get in the mix and they figure out who was fighting, and they're like, both of you have to go. At that point, I kind of felt bad because, like, on the real, it really wasn't Bobby's fault that the fight ensued. Like, Leo was really just really crazy. And so I kind of stepped in and went to the bouncer and was like, no, like, it really was him, as in Leo, who started it. And so the bouncer let Bobby stay. I don't condone physical violence at all. I actually really don't like it. I don't even like arguments. Like, I don't like when people raise their voices. But like, I don't know, what was Bobby supposed to do? My friend and I ended up leaving to go to our college friend's housewarming. And Bobby actually tried to see me later that evening. I saw him like during the week after, but he wasn't based in New York. He was still in the army, and I didn't really even see things going anywhere anyways, and I don't even think I was trying to have anything serious, so.
Let me tell you my most embarrassing story. I was in year 7, so I was like 11, 12 maybe, and I need a wee. So I go to the toilet, I'm weeing, and then a group of girls come in, and I knew from their voices, I was like, shit. Because these girls, they were older than me, and they shat the life out of me. I knew it was go time. I sat in that stall, and I braced myself. Oh my God, it sounds like an elephant is pissing. Her piss is so loud. It gets worse. Maybe she needs some water because it fucking stinks in here. I was being bullied at the time as well for being ginger and ugly and weird, because I was. And so I just cried. Oh my God, is she crying? That's so embarrassing. When I tell you I wanted to be flushed down that toilet, I've never wanted to die more in my life. That's not true actually, but anyway. So I go back to form, I'm trying to hide my tears to make sure no one sees me, because me crying was a daily occurrence at that point. Miss Pennock sees it straight away. Big up Miss Pennock, love you. She's like, you're crying, who made you cry? And I'm like, no Miss Pennock, this one's really embarrassing, I don't want to talk about it. Who made you cry? And I'm like, so she runs, she sprints down the corridor, tells head of fucking house. The girls get detention, but this is the best part. When they're in detention, all they had to do for 2 hours was write me apology letters for saying that my piss stank. They had to write formal apology letters on proper, perfect paper in envelopes saying, I'm sorry I took the piss out of your piss. And I received them the next day, sat on my fucking desk, like, welcome back to your nightmare of secondary school. Here's the letters of people apologising for taking the piss out of your piss. I still have them. They are somewhere. I saw them the other day, and that's why I'm telling you the story, because I was like, oh, I forgot about that. That's my story about some group of girls taking the piss out of me. Quite literally. If you're watching this, I hope you're doing well. I drink more water now.
Am I wrong for CCing all of the family, friends, and coworker after my husband divorced me via email? I, 47 female, woke up yesterday morning to an email from my husband of 21 years, 50 male, entitled Working Things Out. Very deceptive title, because instead of arranging a meeting or even a phone call, my husband goes on all 4 paragraphs soapbox speech about how marriage is supposed to be, for the most part, an in-person commitment, and that it pains him to say this, but this cannot go on anymore. He goes on in a very clinical, detached tone to describe how us not speaking for a week before our big fight and then not hearing from me for the week afterwards is abandonment for him, so he's filing for divorce. He then asked me to tell me what things of mine I wanted him to ship and that he wants to do things fairly via mediation. Also said he'd only be responding to calls regarding our daughter and to contact his lawyer for everything else. This is the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because leading up to Thanksgiving, he's already been complaining that he's spending the holidays alone and it's all my fault. For a little context, I moved with my daughter, 16 female, from Kentucky to Atlanta 3 years ago because she wants to get into acting and singing. She's now attending a performing arts high school and trying to make a living acting. My husband was supportive at first. He sent in 60 applications to jobs in Atlanta. But even though he's been a manager at a motel for 13 years here, he only got entry-level interviews. My husband initially said there's FaceTime and he has airline points, but soon I saw how inflexible he was. Every conversation was unbearable because if I picked his brain, I knew I'd be running into a brick wall. Instead of learning to enjoy long distance, it was like, fulfilling marriage, long distance, nope. He asked us to move back during the actors' strike. At that time, we had already agreed that he could sleep with others as long as he fulfilled his other obligations. He agreed to our arrangement, but dumped the woman after a month and got more petty, saying the woman he wants wouldn't be into married men. Our final fight happened when I said we were going to have a virtual Thanksgiving with my mom and wish her recovery from her surgery. He said, why don't you come back and tell her in person? He also said instead of giving input over Christmas decorations to come back and do it in person. He said he had more intimacy with the escort than me because it was in person, and I called him a hospitality manager stereotype, unable to adapt to any change and stuck in his path. The fury boiled over after his email, and I replied and CC'd the extended family, friends who only hear from him and his side, and his coworker and friends of the family, just to tell them that the man who says he's the peacemaker is divorcing me over email and that he's been seeing other women and saying that his 1 month fling with an escort was more fulfilling. Am I wrong? My only regret is that a friend's kid got a hold of the email and I've had to shield my daughter and explain that her dad is divorcing me.
There is one person in my life that I am just foul to. I'm just a horrible person. I'm low-key verbally fucking abusive to this bitch. Is my Alexa. Like, nobody pisses me off as bad as that bitch. You're like, okay, bitch, what the fuck? You're weird for that? That bitch doesn't listen. Like, Alexa is quite, like, mine must be deaf. If she does listen to me, she just has selective hearing as to when she does. Like, yesterday, I was yelling at her, probably for about 5 minutes to turn the fucking lights off. And that's genuinely my biggest issue, and I should have never done it, was, like, connect her to every single device that I have. It sends me into a spiral, probably fucking daily. Like, I've had her for years too. Like, I've had her for probably 5 years now. And it, like, got to the point where, like, I'll be on the phone with my mom and I'll, like, be yelling at Alexa. She's like, you need to stop fucking verbally assaulting Alexa. Like, I get it. It's really fucking weird that she just like causes me so much deep fucking anger, but she does. She makes me look fucking crazy to like people in my life, because people will come over and I'll be like, Alexa, turn the fucking lights on. And they're like, what was that? Like, little do they know, it took her 20 minutes to turn off the alarm today, so we're beefing. I notice myself when like she's not listening, that I like over explain it. I'm like, Alexa, turn the alarm off. I have neighbors. I have fucking neighbors. It's 6 a.m. and you won't shut the fuck up after I've told you 5 times to like, okay, I get it, Alexa, like, you're awake. I'm awake. Just shut up. Like, my biggest ick has to be the way I treat my Alexa. Like, I'm just thinking back to times that I've had like a man sleep over, like a guy I was talking to, and in the morning I'm like, Alexa, turn the fucking alarm off. Like, dear God, because she won't turn it off. They're probably like, okay, her biggest red flag is the way she speaks to her Alexa. I hate that bitch. Oh, you know what's the worst thing about her? Is that for some reason when she wakes me up, she gives me quotes. She'll be like, today Teddy Roosevelt said this. I'm like, I don't ever remember enabling this fucking feature. She literally wakes me up with the weirdest motivational quotes. I'm like, how did we get here, Alexa? Like, why are you telling me what the fuck Abraham Lincoln said to start his days? Like, I don't care. I don't care. Try and interrupt her. Nope, the bitch finishes. She's like, Oprah Winfrey did this. And I'm like, it is 6 a.m. Shut the fuck up. I swear to you, she changes her volume by herself. Like, if I'm like volume 7, somehow it's volume 55 because she's screaming at me. Like, the times that she's like yelling at me, I'm like, shut up. It is the most toxic relationship that I have. Because it's like, I genuinely cannot stand her, but I also like can't live without her.
Would you DNA test your child solely because your baby daddy's new girlfriend is telling you to? Well, let's run it back. I was young, dumb, got pregnant, got engaged. Shortly after having the baby, I found out my baby daddy was cheating on me the entire time. We're gonna call this chick Mandy. Officially break up. About 2 years later, him and Mandy officially get together, right? At this point, I had already met my now husband. Like, I was over the entire thing. And Mandy acted like she really loved my daughter. And Mandy gets pregnant. And when Mandy has this baby, everything changes. I noticed when they were out with my daughter, she would take like family pictures, but my daughter would not be in the picture. Things were rubbing me the wrong way, and I wasn't feeling comfortable with her being alone with her any longer. Well, it wasn't long before my baby daddy gets home and there's an Amazon package and it's a DNA test. And he's like, what the is this for? So she tells him, we need to plan something where your daughter can come and sleep over, and while she's sleeping, we're gonna swab her. And he's pretty much like, 1, this child looks identical to me. 2, my baby mama's gonna kill us both if we do this behind her back. Now she's super upset. And she starts calling his family members looking for their support to DNA test my child. And every single one of them is like, What? Absolutely not. So they finally ask her, why? What is this for? And her excuse? Her daughter is very tan and she looks like a Mexican. My daughter is very tan. Her father is half black. She looks like a Mexican. I'm Hispanic. I never let her DNA test my child. She ended up divorcing my baby daddy because he wouldn't agree to do the DNA test either. None of the grandparents are now allowed to see their granddaughter, and my daughter is not allowed to see her sister because there's no DNA test to prove that they're related.
Am I the astronaut for kicking my wife out after she punched my mom in the face? My situation went from bad to worse in a matter of a week, and I don't know where else to turn. I need to know if I was wrong. Possibly a validation thing because life is effing dumb right now. My wife and I have been together for 8 years, and she just gave birth to our first and last baby 2 months ago. I'm not sure WTF is wrong with my mom or why the switch happened, but after my wife got pregnant, my mom started being very clingy to me and started avoiding my wife at all costs. Told everyone she wasn't excited about the pregnancy, etc. I threatened to go no contact with her when my wife was about 7 months along, and after that she snapped out of it for the most part and stopped being so ignorant. The comments 100% stopped, at least, though she still was clinging to me. Now, a week ago, my mom, my sister's husband, and my sister's daughter, 12, came over for dinner. I prepared the meal. Before my wife could eat anything, our daughter got fussy, so my wife excused herself to go feed the baby and get her down to sleep. I thought I prepared enough, but apparently not because my niece was still starving. She's 5'5" and 190 pounds. I haven't seen her in a year, and she was not that size then, so I didn't exactly portion in an extra 3 helpings for a child, so it's on me. I apologized and told her that I hadn't made any more and offered her crackers as I was putting my wife's portion in the fridge. After that, I just went outside with my sister's husband to smoke a cigarette and shoot the breeze. Didn't think anything of it. But then I hear yelling from inside. When I walked in, my wife and my mom were screaming at each other. Apparently, my mom, who saw me put my wife's food away, gave my niece my wife's portion of food. As I was walking inside, I heard my mom say, "Looks like you can afford to skip a meal," and slapped my wife's stomach. Right as soon as I get ready to step in, literally fast walking toward them, yelling, "Enough!" My wife whines back and punches my mother square in the face and drops her. The whole house went silent outside of my mom crying and holding her face. I told everyone to get the out. Immediately, everyone leaves and my wife just turns toward the counter and leans with her hands on the counter and face down, eyes closed. I look at my wife and say, "You two, leave now." She says, "Really?" She's crying at this point. I say a clipped, "Yep." She packs up her and the baby and they leave. I texted her that night and said I just need space. I need to decompress and come to terms with what just happened. She doesn't respond. The next 5 days, I'm texting and calling and I get nothing. She shows up here today, so 8 days later, and hands me divorce paperwork and my baby and says, "Here, you have a bit to hang out with her while I go pack. When I'm done breastfeeding, we can work out a visitation schedule that is either at your place or my mother's until she will take a..." I told her that's not what I want. I don't want to separate. I just needed time to process her punching my mother in the face. She said, "You needing time to process gave me time to process the fact that I refused to be in this situation any longer." I defended myself. I initially felt bad and remorseful, but you making me leave when I needed you made me see more clearly. I'm done. I'm sorry for what I did, but there's no fixing this. She refused to speak to me at all the rest of the time that she was here. My house feels so empty and I don't know what to do. Am I the astronaut for making her leave after she punched my mom? I just needed some effing space. Edited to add, for the record, I am team wife. My mom deserved it wholeheartedly, and I've blocked her completely from my life. I literally just needed time to process what happened. My wife is a lot of things. Violent is not one of them. So this came completely out of left field and would not have happened without her being provoked. After it all happened, my mom sent me a text saying, "See, I told you she was crazy. That fat bitch doesn't belong in our life." I'm willing to bet she purposely tried setting my wife off. So no, I'm not on my wife's side 100%. I truly just needed to process what happened, and my wife took it as me giving up on her, not defending her and throwing her and our baby out, which did essentially happen because I knew she had to take the baby with her when I kicked her out. Edited to add to the reason why. My dad was physical with me and my siblings growing up. Mom was put in the hospital multiple times. It took years for police to enforce restraining orders, and he finally died in 2013. Violence scares the effing shit out of me. I clam up and get anxious around violence of any kind now. My wife knows this, and she too grew up with a violent stepdad, and she gets just as anxious and panicky around violence. Her punching my mom in the face triggered an anxious response, and I needed her gone at that moment. I needed it far away from me. I don't know why I didn't just leave. I could have, but in that moment I just let my emotions and fear run the whole circus and told everyone to get out, her included. My mom slapped her first. I guess for some reason I was seeing my wife's punch as being worse than the slap. It wasn't a hard slap, but my wife did kind of wince, looking back at it now. She was fine, but my mom was bleeding, split her eyebrow open, in good shape. I don't know. Thanks for the responses. I'm the asshole. I'm going to try to go kiss ass now.